Netflix is adding more warnings for viewers about graphic content in the show 13 Reasons Why. The drama is based on a best-selling book about a high school student who kills herself and leaves behind 13 audio tapes detailing the reasons why. According to the Centers for Disease Control, suicide is the third leading cause of death among young people between the ages of 10 and 24. Our news partner, Catholic News Agency, has a roundup of Catholic groups urging caution against the show. We're joined now by our expert panel to discuss this from both a pastoral and psychological perspective. Father Matthew Schneider is author of Spiritually Mentoring Teenage Boys and a priest with the Legionaries of Christ. Dr. Michael Horne is Director of Clinical Services for Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Arlington. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Now, my teenage years are still fresh in my mind. They were less than a decade ago. Let's talk about the unique struggles facing teens and high schoolers today. What are they grappling with, and what might make them vulnerable to a show like 13 Reasons Why?
Well, I think the biggest difficulty that teenagers are facing today that maybe, 20, 30 years ago when we had our teenagers, we didn't really face, was all this technology, which can be very helpful, but can also create a kind of social isolation. Mm-hmm. Because one of the great things about human life is all our social relationships, mm-hmm. in person, talking to your grandma, visiting your grandma, things like that. And if everything is done mediated by the technology, you lose some of that.
A personal interaction.
Absolutely. I think that we're more isolated, and even families are spending quality time staring at tablets. We're losing those genuine encounters that are really essential to health and flourishing.
If a parent or a youth minister might suspect one of their teens is dealing with depression, maybe suicidal thoughts, what would you recommend them? What advice would you give?
I think one of the things we need to do is really address the issue right away. Mm-hmm. Not be afraid of using words like depression or suicide, but approaching it in a casual way, in a way that says, I'm concerned about you, I want to help, as opposed to something that might put the teenager on edge or feel like suddenly they're in the spotlight with a lot of unwanted attention.
Well, I think along with those, I think there's also the fact of being close to teenagers, because if you develop a relationship with those teenagers, you're much more able to help them. And if you see that the teenager is struggling with something, well, find things that they're going to enjoy, help them out with that, And also, I'd say the spiritual, in the sense of sometimes struggles are really like some kind of sinful thing, and confession is very helpful. Not that there's others who need psychologists, but some people, it's really kind of like a sin is eating away at them, and confession is very helpful.
And the sacraments can be so powerful there. Now, how can families in a healthy way discuss these topics that are very real but very difficult?
It is a difficult thing to talk about, as you say. I think one of the things that we have to do is focus on the relationship and say, you are not alone. We want to be here. We want to talk about these issues that are very pervasive. In fact, there are probably about 25 suicide attempts for every one completed suicide. This is something that is a huge issue for young people today, and we want to make sure that they get the support that they need starting at home.
And I think a lot of it comes up naturally, because eventually a friend of a friend will commit suicide or something. I don't think it's something you go out of your way to bring up too often, but it comes up, and you have to be able to address it face on, like Dr. Michael said. And I think as well with that is to know the maturity of your teen, because to know at what level they can do it, I remember a priest friend of mine was telling me about how they were doing a funeral for a dad, and they were hiding it from the kids the dad had killed himself, because the kids were just little kids. But it would be very different if the kid was, a high school senior. I don't think you would hide that from them.
Right, you have to look at each child. Now, Father, you've talked about countering depression by bringing joy into your life. How do you bring joy into one's life?
I think that there's a lot of different aspects of joy. Joy is not kind of like a monolithic reality. We have joy from different things. We have joy from our relationship with God, our relationship with the saints, our spiritual life. We have joy from our relationships with others, our family, our friends. We also have joy from doing things we enjoy. I enjoy going for a bike ride, and it's not missing something spiritually, but I'm missing a certain aspect of it if I'm not able to go riding for a month.
And I think too that there's joy that comes in a sense of fulfillment, the idea that our lives have meaning and purpose. And often when we're trapped just socially interacting online, we miss the reality of the situation. We don't see the reality of people's lives, and sometimes we start to lose a sense that we really do have meaning and value in our lives.
So if there might be someone who's watching this and grappling with these issues right now, what would you like them to hear? What do you want to say to them?
The most important thing is that they are not alone. This is very common. There is hope, and there are people out there who want to help.
Father?
And I would say the same thing, but I say when you're looking for people who want to help, first reach out to those, you know, around you, like your family, your best friend and things, maybe your mom or something. And after that, if that doesn't seem to be sufficient, then reach out to a counselor. And there's no shame in going to a psychologist or a counselor if you have something like that. It's just like, you know, I have a friend who's diabetic. They have to take medicine every day so they don't have insulin spikes. They have to go to the doctor every few months to check, make sure everything's going fine.
Father Schneider, Dr. Horne, thank you both.